Wonder if I should be doing the little spiel or if I should wait for everyone else to join, or if there even will be anyone else today.
We can wait 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, since nobody is joining.
Yeah. Well, okay. So don't forget the CNCF code of conduct and be nice to everyone, which is the two of us. And let's get started then, I guess. We're pretty much just going to discuss networking things anyhow. I think you'd be the main person to talk to there. So let's see. What is this about IP ranges, capabilities?
Yeah, I just was trying today to deploy with KineNet again, and it wasn't working. And the problem is that this IP ranges thing is something that is only, or where I just read in the chain log, and it was introduced only in the Docker shim.
Do you have a link to the specific?
Yeah, let me try to find the commit. The thing is, I don't have clear how this Docker shim and all these things work. Well, let me find the commit.
This is to get the pod IPs?
Let me share. Where do I share the link? Well, let's use
You could just send it on Slack.
on Slack. So that's the commit. The thing is that it sends the IP range as a variable to the CNI plugin, but it was introduced in 1.12. The thing is that I don't know how this works, but how the structure of the Kubernetes repo is, because it says kubelet docker shim does network, and I don't know if this only works for docker shim.
There has to be an option to do this for like CRI. Let's see. But so this is telling the CNI like what IP range we want, right?
Yeah, otherwise you need to configure this JSON file manually per node.
Well, this suggests that, please see that. Sorry, I just said it in the, this suggests that it's, or that's the wrong line. If you look, there's a with capability IP ranges. I assume that, I would be surprised if they didn't have this working.
Yeah, but the thing is, this is the part that I don't get, is who sent this to the container the kubelet, no?
Right.
Yeah, and that's the part that I'm missing, is what part of the code is sending this option. This patch is introducing this option in the Docker shim. Is the Docker shim folder the same for CRI or?
That might have been because it. Um, hmm.
So this is the commit that introduces the.
PR.
If you don't have this, you need to configure the JSON manually in each folder in each node with the subnet.
Yeah.
That's what Calico. I think Calico has an option, to pull the API, get the pod CI there, and write it in the JSON file.
Yeah.
And then you end doing another Calico. I don't think that we should do that.
Right. We should not do it. But I imagine we'll probably just need to find like where it does this. There should be it should be doing this. There should be compatibility. If not, maybe that's we fix. Okay. So we also have so that's the one thing we need to figure out for KindNet to be an option is figuring out how we make sure that the IP ranges is being passed.
Well, that's why I was trying to work today on that, but let me play a bit more with this, and I come back to you with more results. I think that the node removal that you mentioned is something important or not, because
I don't think that's important to start. That's something we can come back
for
to.
Rich.
I'm very curious to hear about this exposing node ports option.
Yeah, this is the funny thing is, what's the Tor network? You use a SOX proxy.
Mm-hmm.
Then installing a SOX proxy in one of the nodes allows you to is a SOX proxy is connecting ports. It's a switching panel of ports. So you install a SOX proxy in one of the nodes, you forward that port, and in your browser you can reach everything. You can reach service IP, the engines ingress, the ports, everything. So that's only forwarding one port. You have access to all the ports in the cluster.
What about other tools that are expecting things like that want to talk to like a node port or a load balancer IP or something? I imagine they would need SOC support then.
Yeah, the thing is you need SOX support. So, but for a Windows or Mac user that are going to develop web application, all the browsers have SOX 5 support.
So that sounds pretty excellent for web, but what about like REST APIs and things?
Yeah, because Curl has SOX support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's. Let me put some docs together and an example so you can go through it, because the only patch needed is to forward an additional port,
Right.
And I had it working now in my laptop.
Mm-hmm.
That is Windows. So
I spent some time in that as well. I think we can pretty easily allow people to forward extra ports. Like technically speaking, that's a pretty simple thing to support. I think the tricky one is how we make it predictable, like which node the port is on. After I run kindclate cluster, how do I know where that port is? For a single node, it's pretty obvious. It's the one node in the cluster. But for multi-node, because the node names are computed, you'd have to know that, okay, I did the first node in the list, so it's going to be this node name or something like that, which is kind of an awkward coupling.
The thing is that that's why Kubernetes has all these services and all these things and all these virtual IPs. If you then you start to redo what Kubernetes did to avoid that the thing. That's why I thought in another approach with it, because you mentioned the SSH thing, and if you start to forward ports, the kubectl port forward is more or less what you are going to get. What is the difference?
There's I think there's two things we could do with kubectl forward. One is that I've heard people have problems with it that's not really meant to be a thing. The other one, and so like I don't know if there's priority in Kubernetes to make it work better. The other one is that if we did go eventually the route of having like a controller doing this and all of that complexity, the upside we could gain is that we could actually say like here's the load balancer IP and everything, and then tooling that's just expected to work with Kubernetes resources would already work. So like if I have some tool and it like looks up the load balancer IP and then it contacts it, if we can actually assign an IP, listen on it, and then update the in cluster resource for that, then that's like easiest to integrate with. But I don't think that's a like first solution. That's a like that would be cool someday, because then you could actually implement type load balancer.
Oh, well, that's right. No, absolutely. The thing is, if you take the load balancer node right now, you can reboot it because you don't care about the IP address, and you install in the engineer's rules the port forward. So you definitely you can do that.
Yeah, I mean that would be an option.
And then you can implement your own load balancer. So we can leverage the load balancer node to do all this.
The additional thing that we were looking at that might be interesting, and I'm not sure how easily you could solve this with this, was like if we had a persistent data. And again, this is like not something I want to build right now. This is it might make sense in the future. It's significantly more complicated than just forwarding a port or setting a SOX proxy or something. If we could have an IP range that we want to use for load balancer IPs, we could add them to an interface on the host dynamically and then listen on that IP and for that. So you could have an IP per load balancer.
But then you can have those IPs without assigning anything. Those are virtual IP. The only thing that you need is to install the routers in the nodes.
But we also want it to work from the host.
Well, I need to draw it. It's too many IP addresses and ranges.
So what we do is we add them on our interface on the host, and then we listen on that.
Yeah, but for virtual IPs, if you want to add, you add to the local host interface.
Right.
And then
but we want it to be done on the like outside the nodes.
Yeah, but that's outside the nodes. Well, but you need to start to add things to the host.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if it's
like we would need stuff on the host, and it would be more complicated, but it would let you have like, okay, I look up my type load balancer IP, I hit it on this port, and it actually works inside and outside the cluster.
Well, what you are doing is basically you can create a VPN in a container with a VPN and dial into the VPN. Then you have all these things.
Yeah, so I was looking at like originally what I was looking at is having like an SSH container.
Yeah, but the thing is, with the SSH container, where do you add the routers?
So you add the routes on the host.
Yeah.
And you have something listening. You have a little proxy on the host that listens on that IP port that you've allocated, and then forwards through the container to the other containers.
You are looking for this project. SSH.
But again, I would rather come up with something less complicated to start and look towards that as like cool, we can test another thing like load balancers work.
No, but what you are mentioning is this is a project, that you can create a VPN over SSH. But I think that they are creating, I don't remember now. There's a project that is doing exactly what you're saying.
I mean, there's one additional step, which is you need to have it integrate and update the load balancer entry. Like we want a Kubernetes controller as well that implements that API. So we need to monitor services, and when you create a service with type load balancer.
And why not use traffic or Envoy that can monitor the services themselves?
How do we get traffic into those?
Traffic is a proxy that can.
Right, but we're in the Docker for Mac situation. We have to get it across into the VM. Okay. Within the cluster, this is an easy problem. We can run any of the existing out-of-the-box load balancers. They should be fine. But if we want actual load balancers that you can talk to from the host, which I think is more likely if you're going to do type load balancer to begin with, then you need to get that traffic from the host into the cluster. And if you really want to implement type load balancer, you probably want different IPs for the different load balancers, which is possible, but we just need something to set up the IPs, put them on one interface, listen on it, and forward it. And then we want that thing to update the in-cluster information.
I got the point. I was just thinking to solution for not reinventing the wheel, no?
I mean, that's where I would. I don't think this isn't a today. This is just while we're talking about the just node port options or whatever. This is solving this problem is something I'd like to eventually solve, because we want to emulate as much as possible. Ideally, we can get dynamic volume provisioning and CSI drivers and load balancer, and like we can mimic as much as possible. And that one is solvable. It's a lot of reinventing. It's a bit overly complicated, but I don't think there's any like drop-in solution to solve this because of the funkiness of almost all of them are not designed for you having a private network. Like essentially the Docker containers are on a private network, not on Linux, but on Windows and Mac.
Yeah, but the thing is, let me understand something. So the idea is to discard things. The idea is to have the kind of service load balancer in the host. So for Windows and Mac, do you want to have a kind daemon or something?
Yes, you would be, like kubectl port forward, you would be expected to run some command that.
Okay.
And that's the only way we'd be able to implement this, I think.
Yeah. That's why current model with a CLI, I wasn't able to think in a way of doing that.
And Duffy has MetalLB working on Linux.
I don't know the project. I know it exists, but I never dig it into.
And what the MetalLB?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty simple. It's only announcing routes or announcing fiddling with the ARP to fake the IP address. Yeah, but the thing is, with the Mac or the Windows, you have to fake the IP address for the host and then translate that and tunnel it to the cluster that is inside the Docker network.
Right. So far, the most straightforward suggestion I've got from anyone is just add an IP to an interface. So like we have a pool of IPs, we select one, we edit the interface, and then instead of routes, you can actually just bind a bucket to that IP. And then we just need to get that traffic into the cluster. And that's
a VPN.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't have to reinvent the VPN part. We can call into something to make that. and it can be SSH forwarding or WireGuard or VPN or whatever. So that it would probably look something like it ensures that a container exists within the cluster's space, which it's using to bounce the traffic. It has the daemon running. It creates these addresses on the host. It listens to them. It forwards. We'd probably need something to clean up. And it would just create a connection through with a VPN, and it just needs to manage that. And then whenever it does successfully allocate, it needs to update the service.
Well, for that is you can run an IPsec daemon. All the Windows and Mac has client for that, but you need to tell the user that he has to dial in to the VPN network.
Well, no, that's the thing. Right, but I think that's worse than we just have a little daemon listen, because then as far as you're concerned, like we can just make this look like what you expect. So if I'm running in the cloud on Kubernetes, I expect when I create type load balancer that some machine's going to come up somewhere. It's not my concern. It's going to have an IP, and when I hit that IP, the traffic winds up in the cluster at my service.
So this is wait is to create a tap interface in the host.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have the tap interface, you can tunnel and do whatever you want.
Right. So we just operate a little tunnel listening on that port, and we can reuse code for the tunnel, but we probably do actually need to create the tunnel.
There is a Go project for tunneling.
And then we need to get it into the node, which is where I thought that it would probably be easiest to just use an SSH forwarding daemon or something along those lines, because of the getting from the host to into the cluster network.
Yeah, once but the thing is, you are adding a daemon and creating a tap interface. So I mean,
yeah, but ideally we could avoid creating for each of these. The other option would be something like we try to create a container and bind it to that IP address, or we try to get the like a load balancer proxy type container bound to all these. But again, I would come back to that because I think more people are clamoring for a node port right now than load balancer.
Well, the load balancer is a nice feature.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a nice feature, but it would also be one that I would probably say we should think about and get right and come back to later. It's just while we're looking at all these networking options, it would be good to kind of keep ideas for that in mind so we don't more or less build it twice. And the SOX proxy idea kind of reminded me of that, because that gets awfully close to you could use the SOX proxy to implement the bouncing traffic. We could be the client of the SOX proxy, the daemon on the host.
Well, that's true.
But
I think that we should write down the use cases,
In use cases, ideally, I think many something like this, you want to be able to use the same definitions, right? I want to be able to take my manifests and apply them to my kind cluster, and they should just work.
I wanted to ask, these daemons, they have to be platform specific, but we still plan to write them in Go for Windows and Mac?
I think the only thing that needs to be platform specific, for the idea I had, is creating the IP on the interface. That can probably be a small platform, multi-platform package that has uses build tags.
Mm-hmm. You spoke about reinventing the wheel, but aren't there solutions for this already existing that can solve the problem instead of us maintaining this extra code?
So Minikube kind of has something, but it gets to cheat a bit because they only have one node. So they just make routes to the node, I believe, and they're control and they're running a VM, so they have an IP for the VM and they just make routes to it. I'm not aware of any other ones for this. The other load balancer, there are actual Kubernetes load balancer solutions, but those are not those are designed for running where you have a network that you can route over and whatnot. We essentially have a problem where like our nodes are in a private IP space. I'm not aware of any like out of the box solution for that. I also don't think we actually have to reinvent that much. I mean, basically we like listen to service and update it. That's a pretty straightforward one. We can use standard controller stuff for that. Creating an interface or an IPN interface shouldn't be super complicated. And like listening to a port, I mean, sure, it'll be pretty similar to kubectl port forward, but like a cheap way that we could wrap this would actually be, okay, your IP is always localhost and we do kubectl port forward. The problem with that is then your IP address won't work in the cluster. If we just make this like, it's a controller and all it does is assign one. So that's the other one that I've seen, and that's what Knative is using right now. They install routes on the host to the Minikube VM, and then there's a daemon that just watches for services, and it always assigns the VM IP.
Yeah, but that's nice, and I think that's.
It is nice, but we can't do that.
Well,
there's no routable IP from the host.
Then this what we need to do. I was focusing on the ports only. I didn't get that idea, but that's nice, and that's very clean, because for the users, yeah, they need to operate the same way that they are operating in the cloud.
There's I mean, they're both related different problems. The node port problem could also be done by, if we could figure out a way to make it like just the UX problem of like, how do I know which nodes have this port available? Like if I'm scheduling my Kubernetes app and I have a multi-node kind cluster and it's gonna listen with like a host port, like I'm gonna set up Ingress Nginx as my solution. I need to make sure it lands on the node that I've actually forwarded the port to the host. So it's just a UX issue. Like we can let you have extra port forwards. That's not a deep technical problem. The UX problem was like, how do you know which machine? Like maybe we labeled a node, or
you don't need to know it, because the services are available on all nodes. Once you post in a service, you can reach whatever node in the cluster, and it's forwarded to the virtual IP and then reaches the node.
Well, no, but so forget the load balancer stuff. So if we
I'm talking about services only.
Yeah, if we just let you have extra port forwards, how do you make sure that port forward hits that service? You need something like Ingress Nginx, and that workload needs to use host port and needs to be on the right machine. It needs to be on the node that has the port forward.
Yeah, but if the thing is, let's just say we have an old port, so you can hit the service in that node port in whatever node of the cluster.
From inside the cluster?
No, from outside the cluster.
How am I going to hit a node port from outside the cluster?
Because you expose the port. The port is
right. Let me rephrase. Node ports themselves are not predictable. They're over a large range. So actually doing node ports isn't viable. What we could offer is we could say we can give you extra port forwards, and you can use like a host port, and the host port can match our port forward. But then it needs to be on the machine that has the port forward, right?
But when you reach
this is for statically adding extra ports when we create the nodes. That's an easy problem. It's just a UX issue. There's a harder problem where like maybe we can somehow dynamically add port forwards, but I'm not up.
No, but the thing is, I don't think that we need to add port forward, because the IP tables installed for the services are doing that. So the only thing, you only need to get the IP table rule. So the Kubernetes start to do all the plumbing with the IP tables.
But those IP tables rules are in the node's namespace, not on the host.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so no, the problem we have that people want is they want to have some like test running on the host and it needs to talk to a service in the cluster.
Yeah, this is the thing that I did with the SOX proxy too.
Right. So the other option is instead of a SOX proxy, we allow you to pick your own extra port forwards. That's a pretty easy.
And that's what
The only problem with that is that you need to match up the workload to the port forward.
yeah, but you have the load balancer that is a matrix of connecting ports. You know, it's just say I expose this service in the port with the node port, the 30,000 whatever. So you have the service port. You have the service port exposed in the cluster. You have the load balancer, and you have the forwarded port. You just need to connect those ports and send to whatever node in the cluster.
I'm not. I wasn't talking about the load balancer. Right now, the load balancer only handles externally. I'm talking about the case of like you just let them add a port forward to a node.
Yeah, but the thing is, you need to let them choose the node and the port.
Right.
Yeah.
They would need to specify this at cluster create time. So
no. Why? So let's say we have two nodes.
We can't add ports to a running container, as far as I know.
Yeah, but the thing that's the tricky part is you have the load balancer node. You know, you can install the new path and restart the node. So let's call the port forwarded node.
Okay.
You have the configuration with all the ports that you want to forward there. The thing is that you need to restart the node every time that you want to add a new node, a new port, you know? But you can keep restarting the node because the IP address of that node doesn't matter. The thing is that you need to recreate that node, the port forwarded node or whatever name.
I do think that I could have sworn are you sure we don't use? I'm pretty sure we do use that IP address for the API server endpoint.
Well, but let's not use the same for the API. Let's talk about an additional node only for port forwarding. Yeah. The thing is, the only way to do that thing is that I was testing that and it worked. Is you need to create a special node and keep it restarting. You want to add a new node, you restart it, you expose new ports, and you configure the node with the new port forwarders, and that works. But you need to add all this to manage all this configuration.
Yeah, we'll need something. We'll also need some. Okay, I like that approach. We're gonna need some way to track like which ports.
Yeah, that's easy because it's in the Docker inspect. So you have I tried that approach before, but I didn't mention because I thought that you weren't going to be happy with it. The thing is,
I mean, I definitely think that all of these are less powerful, the load balancer thing, but they can be done a lot more simply, and it might be like a step towards it, especially if we can figure out. I don't think any of us look too closely at. You might be able to, after creating the IPs, just let the Docker container bind to the IP, and then we don't have to run we don't run a daemon on the host. The Docker will be doing the forwarding if it's possible to use those additional like non-localhost ones. I do think that might actually be possible with the right flags to have this container possibly also instead of just port forward on a specific IP. We'll have to, we should explore if that's possible.
But why do you want to keep the IP?
No, if we can create our own IPs on the host, then we can also use this solution to do load balancer later.
Yeah, but I don't know how because
I'm not saying definitely. I said we should look at that too. Because if we do, then that's also nice because we only have to build this like load balancer management thing more or less once.
Okay. Let me do something. I will not code anything. I will write down and I will write down the steps. So, or you can try, because I did this thing with the load balancer. I did this thing with the SOX proxy. And once it's written, you can check the different approach and do some play.
Or also be super
program.
helpful to write these somewhere to just tell people to like, you know, some of our more adventurous users can try some of them and tell us what they think.
So.
I can probably get a few people to try those if we can give them some instructions.
Yeah, I can give you instructions for the SOX things and for the Docker port forward thing with examples, you know. And I can think in something with the load balancer, by the way.
It seems that Docker port mapping allows to map to IP.
Is that which?
Yeah.
Is that port or?
You can use EP, XEP, column host port, column container port.
But is that expose or because as far as I know, expose is just a documentation thing. That it's the port flag that we want.
No, it's -p.
Cool.
Port mapping, and you can also expose port ranges.
Right. So what we might be able to do is have the command statelessly-ish add like a load balancer IP from some pool the user specifies with some default in some private IP space, and then update the port forwarding container to bind a port to that IP, and then update it. And then we just might want to allow running a controller so that you, instead of invoking this command, you invoke it once to be running, and then you create type load balancer.
I think that a clean solution will be to have a container that runs in the host network. So create a container that runs in the host network, create as a privileged container, create the IP, and then we can do everything using
I don't
Docker
think
inspect.
it works for Mac and Windows. I think you still need to be recreating the container with the port forwards because it's bridging the VM. They're doing something funky with that, and it's not very well documented. Sorry, I'm getting notifications.
Yes, I was thinking of something cleaner to have kinder to create the IP.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't think it would be that big of a deal to have a little like kind sub command that is a controller that runs against your cluster. Kind won't have any problem obtaining a kubeconfig or running against the cluster, monitoring for service changes, and you would only need to run this if you're trying to have like load balancer support. So instead of invoking kubectl port forward, you would invoke this thing to manage your like ingress, and it would manage a container. I had that.
Well, the problem is all this Windows and Mac thing.
Right, but that should be less of a problem if we have something running on the host.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So we can have like a kind binary that you run that does this. But we should probably.
Well, I think that there is so I was checking both on Windows and Mac. you are not allowed to reach the Docker network, but they are announcing the IP address with a special DNS. So maybe we can leverage the DNS.
We announced the host from inside the network, or from inside, or from the containers. They have a special DNS entry. But that's to get back to
This is good.
It's confusing to describe it. That's to get back to localhost on the host.
Yeah.
Specific to Docker for Mac, and that's another thing that I've intentionally not leveraged because that solution doesn't work for Linux. Like you'll get the containers, you can only get the containers loop back. On Linux, you're kind of stuck if you want to talk to things that are actually on the host loopback. So that's the other thing that's nice about we bounce traffic out to something on the host and then in, is that you have you finally have a consistent address for both, which is something that is like just a broad Docker problem.
Well, at least we have a plan.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we should let's play around with the node port options, and I will also look towards the load balancer one. But definitely, I'm not trying to build that one today. I think it's more pressing to solve the node port stuff, and I do want to look some more and see what we can do about the complexity. But I'm mostly worried about just making the container reliable and trying to avoid managing a bunch of extra state. I'm not super worried about like needing to run a controller. That's pretty straightforward, and like right now that is also the exact same situation. If you want to get traffic into the cluster today, you need to use something like kubectl proxy, kubectl port forwarding. Those are also daemons. They're not typically run as a service, but I hope people are not doing that. I kind of know we had someone over the weekend that was doing that, but the intention would be something like in your CI job, you background this task that is doing the network for you if you need that functionality. And if you don't need this functionality, you don't pay for it, we don't run it.
Sounds nice. The thing is, I have some ideas regarding that, but I need to lab it and to play with it.
Thank you for all of that.
It was a long time since I played with the Windows network.
Yeah, the situation there is interesting. I'm just glad that hopefully we're getting down to like pretty much one main for each platform and not back when the Docker wasn't offering one themselves and everybody was using their own thing. Fabrizio and Lubomir, did you have anything you wanted to bring up?
I have a question on the PR about containerd. Have you some idea when it will be merged?
Sorry, what? It cut out.
The PR about containerd. Mm-hmm. Have you an idea when it will be merged? It will merge?
It is merged.
It is merged already? Okay, great. I missed that.
Yeah.
And okay, so I can look at how to rebase kinder on top of that. And I think that maybe not now but in KubeCon we can talk about starting to backport some feature back in kind, because at least I think that what we do at node build time, for instance, building a node image starting from upstream binaries is something really, really cool. Mm-hmm. And So maybe that we talk about starting bringing back something that can be useful also to other users.
Is that the tarball build?
Yes, it started from the tarball beans, the idea, but now it is much more flexible because we can add more release of Kubernetes into the same. We can add more images. For instance, I want to bring in NGX because I always use NGX. I want to bring in some additional things in the image. So when the container starts, everything then goes smoother. I don't have to download. This is really interesting. Mm-hmm. Or I want to override a specific binary because I want to test SKU and whatever. So there is something that is flexible. Some of this is for the Kubernetes CI because it's really specific to testing Kubernetes. But I think, for instance, building from upstream tarballs is useful. Building from adding image is useful for everyone. Adding image tars to the image.
Well, so we have switched. Instead of adding image tars now, we're actually able to import them into the content store directly, which is more space efficient and time efficient.
Yes, I have to check this one.
Yeah. Well, we should definitely think about that because some of this I've actually been prototyping because the tarball build, if nothing else, is definitely one that I want to get in and I want to start reworking that. But a lot of it's been blocked on needing to make the breaking changes to the node image. And I spent way too much time trying to make that not breaking. And I got it working for 1.14 forward, but I ran into too many problems where before 1.14 we don't auto detect things, and I've made it breaking and got moving forward again.
And also, I think that an idea that can be interesting, for instance, for the CNI problem, how to manage different CNI, is that basically I started to add the labels to the image I'm building.
Yeah.
And then at create time, I consider these labels in order to make a decision.
I'm playing that. I think the main concern I have is actually more along the lines of if we're having one that's actually integrated, we need to manage things like the IP space, and I'm trying to avoid us doing that right now. So I'm actually kind of leaning towards, I want to figure out the problems with KindNet and offer that, and then additionally offer an option where Kind doesn't, you set some field and we don't manage CNI. We give you a cluster without CNI and we just say, cool, you want to try different CNI stuff, you know your way around CNI, just install the CNI, do whatever. And for most people, that should just look like kubectl apply Calico manifest or whatever. And they might need to tweak it, and we might have some guides or docs for that. But then, instead of shipping it and shipping in the binary, we can just ship a guide, and continue to keep the surface down. I think if we ever get to the point where we have a lot more people working on this full time, then maybe we should go full Minikube and say we offer the kitchen sink. But I think right now we're probably best saying, whatever, this is for people that are doing advanced development. We offer a working cluster out of the box, but if you want to fiddle with something, here's a switch to be able to fiddle with it. And again, I would not get hung up on phases first, but I think regardless of the phases stuff, we should have an option in networking specifically for don't do CNI.
But Fabrizio, the thing that you are mentioning is this node variant thing that you can build different node images.
Mm-hmm. Yes, basically it is an alternative. Now it is an alternative or a complement to the build node image that it is in kind. But what I was saying, and there is some overlap that I would like to clean up, But what I was saying is something different. Is that while building this feature, I faced the problem that I need to have some information that moves from the build phase to the cluster create phase. Because I didn't want to ask the information 2 times to the user. So what I did is, for instance, when I build the node, now I tag the node with the init version. And this allows me, for instance, to make decision. I can tag the node with the CNI. So if the node is tagged with Calico, I can create the config. And when I create the node, I can set the config for Calico. If the node is tagged for Weave, I can create the config for Weave.
Right.
If the node is not tagged, or I go with a default, or I don't apply CNI.
I will say though, I looked at that approach, and so far I haven't done it because one of my concerns that I need to write down somewhere in document is that if you look at how Kind works today, it's extremely non-branching, and that's something I want to continue. It makes it simple and reliable, and it makes it very portable between like different environments. The goal I have is that it just kind of spins up your containers, and other than the like minimal options you need to be able to provide, or like error handling, we don't do a lot of branching, so that you know exactly what it does reliably. And so we also don't get ourselves into a quagmire supporting everything. So with those breaking image changes, we've just said for Kind 0.34, the image format changed. We're in alpha. All of the code for dealing with the old type stuff is just gone. It was a lot of complexity we don't need more. For example, waiting for Docker to come up. That we just don't have code for that now. And we had some problems with that, and instead of continuing to work on that, we just eliminated the root of the problem and don't support it. So wherever there's been variants so far, I'm kind of leaning towards like, okay, you can build your Calico image, you can have it preloaded and stuff to make it easier. But as far as like installing the CNI, Kind won't own that. Instead, we'll probably even potentially just offer something like KindNet that's just the most minimal thing that works. And we'll offer a knob that says like, okay, I want to opt out of the supported route and do my shiny thing. That will also make it quicker to iterate on those things. Like, I mean, maybe we find out that we actually need Calico to be the default or something, but it'll be faster to iterate on if it's just, you can just tell Kind to leave it alone.
Yeah, you know that we already switched to Calico.
Yeah, so that's still possible, but I spent the weekend, one of the main things I did is a crash course in like everything CNI, and I also pinged Antonio about some stuff, and I want to explore the KindNet option a little bit more because it's so, like, it just does what you need. Like Kind, I have a better understanding now of like Kind can be a lot simpler and lighter because it doesn't have a bunch of problems that you would have with a real cluster. In this case, we don't have we have a flat IP space for the containers. We know which nodes are going to exist, so we don't need to do a lot of the like peering and that sort of thing. And a lot of that tends to be the expensive part, is like, you know, having an extra etcd or whatever. If we can, what Antonio has this prototype where we just use like some standard CNI plugins to do things like host local IPAM, and there's just a little daemon that adds routes for the different nodes pod networks, and that's it. And that will also potentially shrink the image. I think the main loss that I can think of would be like network policy. But again, I'm thinking that like for most of our use cases, you don't need that. And if you really need that, we can say, you know, here's the config you use to like install Calico instead. But for out of the box, like I'm testing Kubernetes, you probably don't actually need any of that. And if that's the case, then we should ship what we don't need.
Okay, I understand. I understand the point. It's just interesting. Something that you can keep in mind. I was thinking this also for the IPv6 story. So I can tag an image. This is an image IPv6, and then the cluster.
So again, that's the other neat thing is with this IPv6 just works pretty much.
Well, this is the thing is
other things that need unrelated, but like the image shouldn't need any change.
This is what works because this is what I get from the guy from Cisco that was working in the IPv6 stuff. So he was testing only with the bridge plugin and this thing.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I think those are super valid points. I think it would still be interesting to tag that metadata because it's useful to have. I think it'd be I think it's going to be important eventually to let people do things like preload their extra images. That's a nice performance optimization. Yeah, but you should definitely take a look at the breaking image changes, kind of going along this philosophy. The other thing we got is we got significantly smaller images. So we did things like tough. We don't have Docker on there anymore. I'm going to need to update some docs to figure out like how on earth you deal with logging in to a private registry and setting that up now for testing. But because we don't ship Docker and Dockerd and whatnot on top of Containerd, we shed several hundred megabytes, and I'm increasingly finding out that like one of the cases where we're really useful is like, you know, anybody should be able to turn on like Travis or Circle or one of the other free open source CIs and spin up a cluster and do testing. And for that use case, you know, some of these changes helped a lot with boot time, but we still have image pull time and like shedding so I did a little bit of work on like, we don't actually need XYZ thing in the image now. Get rid of those.
No, I already looked at the PR 2 of last week, and it was really interesting. So I am happy it merged. Mm-hmm. I have some refactor to do to align to the latest release of Kind, but I'm happy to do this because I consider a huge improvement.
Yeah, but so along those lines, I think we actually have some more passes to take in this on like, you know, this thing is actually like, why are we still installing this package or like that sort of thing. I've been doing some experimentation, and actually what's pretty cool now is ignoring the image pull problem with all of those changes. It's actually light enough that on Docker for Mac, dropping to the lowest settings that I can put on their VM is still more than I need to spin up a cluster. Like I haven't been able to find what's the lower bound on resources because it's so much lower now. And I'm really hoping we can get in that bubble zone of iteration where like you can create and delete clusters in like tens of seconds. We're headed in that direction. I don't think that's the absolute priority, but like everywhere we're not doing that, when we say, okay, we want to spin up some huge test matrix, it's going to be a lot more viable if we can do things like, okay, we already loaded the images once up front and we amortize that compute. And image size is one of the things that's making that not true right now, because in most of the CI, you don't actually have it pulled already. And so if you have to download 2 gigs of image, that loses you back a bunch of wasted time and expense.
Great. Sorry, but I have to leave to another meeting. Thank you.
Thanks. Hope to see you at KubeCon. And Tony, would you be interested in maybe like we can figure out how to like actually, okay, so I'll look at the IP range issue. If we can find that, then what I want to suggest is that we maybe like get KindNet PR'd into like an experiment directory or something like that, so we can start so people can start PRing it in the same place. If we can figure that out and get that working, I'd like to maybe not necessarily always switch yet, but maybe start playing with it in the jobs, and if that pans out everywhere, then the next step is I would want to start doing some work on it, like maybe converting it to a like real controller, like that sort of thing for the daemon, and getting like tooling to like build the multi-arch image for it and like that sort of thing.
Yeah, but how do you want to move forward?
Well, so I guess we need to figure out, today, one of us has to solve the IP range thing. I will look at that. If we can get that solved, then my suggestion would be we start by just staging it into some directory in kind, just so that we can PR it there. I don't like, I'd have to look. I'm not even sure if I can send PRs to that other repo.
No, but what do you want? To have it running in a CI?
Maybe we like make a dummy PR that we're not necessarily intending to merge, that just switches the manifest and the install to that, and
I got
like,
that.
just use that to run the tests.
I that's I have it. I have it already.
In kind.
Yes, it's just only switching the manifest. But you need to. Okay.
We also need to update the image bits, but we can do that, right? We can make make a PR that we don't actually intend to merge, but we can use it to let all the CI run against it.
Yeah.
Because if that works, then the next step would be, if you're willing, upstream the code and then make the switch. Because we'll want to like officially publish images, and I'll want to make them multi-arch and maybe some other tweaks here and there, and then we'll do a PR that changes the code in the docs. But first, I think we need to test it in CI, test it locally, and look at that IP range issue. Lubomir, I don't know if you've seen this. We should link to. I admit I had much poorer understanding of this previously, but this KindNet implementation is a pretty interesting solution to like, how do you get just enough?
But this is what the Azure, the Microsoft people is doing with PowerShell too, you know.
Say that again.
The Azure, the Microsoft cloud people is doing that with PowerShell too. You know, it's just adding the routers to the other host.
Hops also does something similar. I believe it uses KubeNet by default, and then they set up like VPC routes.
This, as I told you, with the CNI plugins, all the heavy lifting is done by the CNI plugins. So you only need to point the routes to the other pod subnets, or you can add routes to the virtual IPs too.
Right. So
I think that with the hairpin thing, you know, the pod go to the bridge and the bridge send it back with IP table rule.
The other action item I'll take on this is actually trying to get something in for being able to switch off kind CNI, so that people can do Cilium and whatever first class. I know Duffy has actually, I need to watch, Duffy even did a TGI Kates on like, here's how you can play with different CNI using it. And I think right now, if I had to guess from my last talking to him, that's probably abusing the like known manifest location. We should, regardless of which option we go with officially in kind, we should probably try to make it easier. So my suggestion is to unblock things. We get that in, and then we might be able to get IPv6 CI working by having that leverage turn off the built-in CNI while we're still like, so we can do this in parallel to KindNet. We can go ahead and just switch off the default CNI and IPv6 CI, add Calico or whatever. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can just apply some handwritten manifest, because the point is to just like get something running and start making people monitor it so we can stop breaking IPv6.
Well, actually the dual stack the dual stack, what's the name, kept was
Yes.
merged. So
Yeah,
the
I
guys,
saw that and I was like, we should get in the other, because I know you have a PR that adds IPv6 to kind, but we've been hung up on the CNI stuff. So my suggestion is we should get the rest of that in, and then the way we should enable it is just giving an option to disable CNI. And then the next step is like kind of in parallel to this, we look at like KindNet, we look at Calico, and we do eventually make a switch, but maybe that's a 0.4 PR or something. But just adding the ability to switch it on and off should be pretty simple. And if KindNet pans out, that may be a pretty straightforward change too. But we shouldn't block. I feel like we shouldn't block IPv6 on the CNI stuff, and we can enable it by letting it supply its own.
The good thing of KindNet is that you can overwrite it. You can start KindNet and then you can start Calico.
Well, I thought about that, but what about KindNet D?
Well, it's
You
just.
probably want that to stop running if you start running Calico.
But I mean, it's I don't know, 100 lines of code. It's easy to put something ugly to detect some other CNI or something.
I don't know. I would still argue for like it's the simple. I think the simplest thing to unblock a whole bunch of work around this and to make it easier for users to just say like, here is a networking no CNI or something like that flag. You set it, kind just skips that step, and then you like do whatever you want to install one. And if we add that, that enables Duffy's case, and it also enables the like moving forward on IPv6 before we have finished moving forward on like Calico or KindNet or whatever.
Well, the thing is, only configuring the CNI JSON, without KindNet or without anything, you have working things. The only problem is that the pods cannot reach other pods in other nodes.
Right, but I mean, people will want to do that, and it also enables the case of like, I want to use Cilium, and I'm running on a host that can actually support that. And sure, you like Cilium is cool, but like Kind probably can't ship it by default because we can't guarantee that everyone has a new enough kernel and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's another topic.
So instead of Kind trying to support Cilium in the code, we just support not doing anything, and then we have some docs that are like, here's how you install Cilium.
Yeah,
and tell you like you're gonna need to make these changes or whatever. Just run these steps.
No, but this the thing. If we are able to put a solution that you can override with whatever, to install whatever thing, and if just the user will install as if he had a clean cluster, So you can tell them you have something working. If you want to start whatever thing, just follow the normal process.
But let me put it this way. So like even assuming that we definitely can get KindNet in soon, like why would I want to override as opposed to just never having had it installed? I mean, I think it's a great feature to have. I'm just wondering like why that would preclude having the ability to turn it off. It seems like you can have both. And that having the ability to turn it off seems most powerful, but it's also not very complicated to support.
Well, the problem with the CNI is, these things that are half into feature, half into infra of the cluster. So,
well, I mean I think it's fairly standard to like do something like run kube init across all your nodes and then like imply like a CNI manifest. I don't think that's significantly different from a lot of other clusters. And this is for the fairly advanced user that like knows they want Cilium. For the like typical testing case, we should still have the out of the box CNI. That's the default. And perhaps that's KindNet, but it looks like we need to go find that IP range issue.
Well,
I have a quick question. What happened with the Docker container network solution that we wanted to use for the node restarts?
There's a work in progress PR on that. I think we need to do some more figuring out about the DNS stuff. It turns out Docker, I think we all here know this, but just to clarify, Docker has some different behavior when you create a user-defined network. There's things they wanted to change, but for compatibility reasons, they didn't change on the default network. So if you create a custom network, they do stuff like have DNS magic, and we ran into a problem with that.
Yeah, but now the CI is passing. Tao was able to
I needed to
solve the issues.
I commented this morning that the thing that, so I think CI was passing. The thing that I didn't like right now is that the way CI is passing is we set up a different host file for kubelet, and that sounds like a recipe for very confusing situations where like the DNS is completely different for everything and kubelet. And I can't figure out what's going on, so I like get on the node and I start messing around, and like all the DNS looks fine, but kubelet is unhappy for some reason, and it's because they have complete like. I think it's a pretty esoteric feature to like tell kubelet to use a particular resolve conf.
We should modify the original one to basically comply with the whoop problem.
Yeah.
I think the kubelet already has the tools to modify resolve conf entries, but we cannot vendor them, I think, because they are probably buried in a package somewhere.
Yeah, well, I think we just need a particular hack to deal with that loop thing. But I haven't had time to that too much more. I just know that I think we can make this work. I think this makes sense. There's a couple things. We need to be labeling the network, and we need to only delete networks that we actually created. And we need to give the users the option to select it, because this is another behavioral change. And for things like federation, I might need to spin up 3 clusters in the same network. Like ideally, you should be able to choose that behavior. So we probably need to add some kind of field to set what network you want. And we need to resolve this resolve conf.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to basically have for kind create cluster. We can basically specify the network we already created with Docker.
Yeah, so when I was thinking on, I think I outlined this. What we can do is we can do like a check if the network exists. If it doesn't exist, then we create it and we add a label that says it's it's owned by kind. And then when we delete clusters, we can list for a one that's owned by it. Because you could imagine something like, I want to use the default bridge, and then kind should be trying to delete that. So we should label it. We should list and delete based on the label. And we should have some option to pick the one you want. Because this is the kind of thing that's going to break applications, is if there's some totally different network that it's on. So being able to pick it, we probably need to, I'm not sure about the code that picks the name. And that was another comment I had. I think there's multiple places that are like computing the network name right now. We should really come up with a good answer for how that's computed and put that in one place, instead of like repeatedly. The PR still seems like a problem, but should be solvable.
Yeah, the PR was rushed, I think. We should have discussed it more. But the contributor is from China, and he basically does not participate in these meetings. He just sends a PR.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fine. So, like, hey, we surfaced some stuff with it, like the loop thing. Definitely that PR in its current state isn't ready to merge, but I think the overall idea makes sense and will hopefully solve some problems. And it sounds like hopefully if we can get this in and we can use host names, then restart should be in a much better shape. Then the next thing that might be interesting to look at is you can actually tell Docker to restart containers. We could look at if we want to enable that, because then you would have something like an actual persistent kind cluster.
You mean like a system disk service that restarts or something? I don't know.
No, so kind of. So we were actually using this on the node for the load balancer stuff before when we were doing the Docker and Docker load balancer. There's this like restart flag, and the Docker daemon is then responsible for restarting the container.
Yeah. I know that this is like the restart policy of the container.
Yeah, so we could look at if we want to have a restart policy, because then I'll need to play with it some more, but that might actually give you like, hey, I reboot my machine, but my cluster is still around.
Yeah.
Which might be desirable.
I haven't tested this, but I think ideally, if you have this flag for the containers, hopefully it's going to work without any interaction from the user.
Right. Because that's the other thing is like, so after the network stuff, it sounds like we can make restart work, but it will require user interaction. It might be nice to make it work with no interaction. I definitely wasn't an original concern of kind, but I could see where like, I'm hacking on some application on Kubernetes on my laptop and I need to reboot, and then now my cluster's in this like broken state. Ideally it would just come back up.
Yeah, we had the first angry user in kind. No problem. But what is going to be the IP? Should we use an IP in the kubeconfig then, or should it be a hostname?
So we use localhost in the user-facing kubeconfig, and in the in-cluster stuff, we can probably use the node's hostnames now for everything. Like the load balancer can use the host. I think everything can use the host names.
Yes.
If we can figure out like merging the resolve comps in a reasonable way.
Well, I don't see an easy solution for that.
Maybe not. We might have to go with something. So the other thing that's going to come up eventually is we're probably going to need to let people also I think I already have an issue trying this. We're going to need to let people override the resolve conf entries a bit anyhow, because of things like I'm running it inside of a Kubernetes, and for whatever reason I can't modify the pod that it's running in, so it's picking up non-desirable DNS, and I want to tell kind to use some different DNS. And this is something that CRI supports for creating containers, so like it seems reasonable that we could have some options for that, but that will need to play into this code that's also already going to need to be modifying the resolve conf. So yeah, I haven't had a chance to look into too much how that problem comes about now, but we have to resolve that. That loop thing is a problem. If we can figure out the loop, then I think we should move forward with this. And when we move forward with this, we can probably move forward with just improving the overall UX around restart to where it's not really an issue.
Well, the problem is that the Docker embedded DNS server has an internal loopback IP address, and that's the address that is in the resolve.com. If you change that, you lose the host discovery, the host name, automatically. So the option is to create our own DNS.
What we could do is, well, so since we create all the nodes, we could just add Etsy host entries.
Yeah, that's what Docker was doing before this DNS thing. The problem is they have race conditions because they share the file, and sometimes they were writing at the same time. And
yeah, this might take. Well, yeah, we need to look into this, but we should be able to come up with something.
But if we disable the loopback, do we still get the benefit of the fixed IPs in the network, in the Docker network?
I think that's still going to be dependent on the order they come up, but we could maybe, if we're requiring interaction, we could fix that, I think, by always bringing them up in the same order. That's not great, though.
Well, that's and you can discover.
Or we could do our own terrible IPAM, but that also seems like a problem.
Oh, no. No, no IPAM.
Like we could do that. We could say like, oh, we're gonna figure out what IPs are free on the bridge and like hand them out, and then.
No, the thing is, if you wait, because the way that the IPAM is done, if there are no more containers, so I think that we can be sure that the container that is restarted is going to acquire the same IP. But then you need to have a control over the restart.
Yeah. So I don't know. Well, the ideal situation would be if we could just like mask out that loopback one. Cheaply.
Yeah, but if you unmask that, you cannot resolve the other host by host name.
Well, no, but if there's some way we could get both, we need to look. I'm sure there are options. It's just like how bad are they? I mean, like for example, we run like our own DNS. Not great, but like that could do it. We could run something that just like doesn't serve that one or.
Well, I would prefer to write the host names in the etc host than create that break with DNS.
But we should explore the options because not being able to get this working because of that one problem is kind of lame. We should be able to come up with something.
Well, the other option is you have the nodes, you can assign up IP addresses, you know.
Right, but that's the now we're doing IPAM.
Yeah, that's
nice. that's what I was talking about. Like we could do IPAM and say like this node gets this IP, but like
yeah,
we
but
probably don't want to do that if we don't need
to. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I actually kind of want to look at the KindNet stuff first, but I will try to also get some time to mess around with the bridge DNS stuff. We also need to think about what the config for that looks like. But I think right now I'm most interested in tackling the CNI stuff because short of that one angry user, I don't think the bridge stuff is as big of a deal. I think it's something we should get eventually. I'm not sure it's a huge problem right now. It hasn't seemed like a blocker for much.
Yeah, it's just it's a nice to have. It's kind in the documentation outlines that this is a temporary cluster. It does not persist.
Right, but like driving it towards one that works for that would probably be best because even if it's temporary, like we've started to find as people do more things with it, there's some things that are still hard to make cheap. It's still hard to like actually bootstrap your whole elaborate setup.
Yeah, and even for for web development, like I restart my Linux box and the kind cluster is gonna come up with all my work from yesterday. So it's a nice to have.
Yeah. Again, I would still like originally, and I've been like, no, don't do that. Use like Minikube or whatever. But like, it seems like people are going to do it anyhow. If we can make it work better without too much fuss. I think we can potentially get some other benefits from having increased isolation by using our own bridge as well. Anyhow,
yes.
Like we essentially get a private IP and a private little network there. That's nice. It seemed like inevitably, if we didn't do this, we were at least going to have to support selecting the bridge anyhow, and we would have run into the DNS issues then. So, do we have any other asks from like the cluster lifecycle side? I know we're still interested in phases. I didn't land that. I did some more work towards that, but I'm a little hesitant on that still because there's a couple of like tricky UX things. Like if I let you disable some critical phase and then I tell you cluster is not ready to use and it's like not ready to use, or like the names of the phases and like the fact that the phases shift. Until like a week or two ago, the init phase did almost everything. So like that's been broken up a bit. I was trying to think if there was anything else that we needed. It sounds like, from what I can tell, Kinder has solved the immediate problems. But
yeah, I mean, I am not super concerned about the way we are currently branching the work in Kinder. Kinder currently is becoming like a Swiss Army knife, but it's not really implementing a lot of functionality under its package folder. It still uses the backend from Kind.
Right.
It also wraps the Cobra, which is not great, but eventually we can have a meeting specifically about the potential to backport some stuff from Kinder, like Fabrizio talked about.
Also needs work.
Which one?
Like the command line stuff. Like you should really I should really fix at some point. It should be possible to like pervasively inject a writer that you want for like standard out and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've kind of put them a bit right now on focusing on like the breaking like user facing changes that we need to continue to make, but I definitely think we're going to need a big code sweep internally to make it more possible to do like testing and things like right now how every other line of code is essentially execing out to Docker. I'm thinking we do a pretty sweeping like introduce an interface that we inject somewhere so that you can start writing unit tests that put a fake, and that will let us add. We've quickly found that like when people try to alias and use Podman, it doesn't quite behave the same. So we'll probably need some Podman implementation of the interface.
Yeah.
I think the IO writer is another one of those things like that like it should be like injected throughout and.
Yeah, this
might be something for like 0.5 or something.
Yeah. It becomes a problem. It's a balance between how fast I can sketch ideas versus how I can plan this interface that can abstract all the different CRIs for me.
Right. And then one thing that I've been finding is that we keep winding up needing more things. So like, I think we're starting to hit the point where we have all of the functionality we need for the most part. And the next step will be improving the actual abstraction and then switching everything to only talk the abstraction. Like right now, we also pass a lot of flags as strings everywhere. And I've found that gets brittle really fast. So like another step that I want to head towards with that is like, even if we're not using like the greatest CRI abstractions everywhere, we should at least use something slightly higher level than like a Docker command line flag, because even just Docker can change on us. And if we can use a little bit more structured options, we have a little bit of that now, but not anywhere near enough. Like the run extraction takes some things like mounts as an actual abstraction now, but it's still just taking a lot of flags.
Yeah, this is a nice cleanup for the future, definitely. So when do you plan to release 0.3?
So 0.3.
What is
I was kind of leaning right now towards like just firing off a release before we head to KubeCon. That way we can like whatever we talk about there will be what's actually out.
So
given that there's only like 2 weeks or something.
2 weeks, yeah, exactly 2 weeks.
So might as well just do whatever little other things we can and then cut it. I know we've got a little bit of follow up. Like we have the PowerPC related fixes this morning. So like pushing out new images for that. So that's the other thing I've considered that like so far we have not replaced image tags except 114.1 because that's not in a kind release. And we've been making not breaking changes, but changes to that image. Like enhancing the entry point to do the shared mounts. So we might as well keep trying to find whatever other things we messed up in that that I messed up in that change and iron them out. So I was thinking we might as well just do a release at KubeCon. It would be kind of silly to do a release with only like a week or two of work. So given that we haven't quite gotten 0.3 yet, we might as well just do it at KubeCon and then, or right before KubeCon, and then we can start planning 0.4, which I imagine we've got networking stuff we need to do more work on, and then longer term we've got like bring in some kinder stuff and do some internal code cleanup and start like, as we're supporting more things, we can't lean as heavily on like pre-submit hits everything, and we've really got to start getting some tests and stuff. So to do that, we have to not be execing every other line of code.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, we can hold a couple of weeks. You can basically release on Friday before the week before KubeCon.
That's what I'm thinking is just like my layover on the way to KubeCon, just like cut release then. Sounds good.
Yeah, untested.
Or like, on the way to the contributor summit or something, like, yeah, sure. By the way, we have a kind release, or maybe when I'm trying to figure out how to finish filling up these talk slots, it's like, and we're doing it live.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I would say right around the beginning of KubeCon. I don't know that it's super important to set a hard date, but it definitely should be soon. We've got big changes. I am somewhat tempted to toss in KubeNet, but maybe not.
Antonio, are you coming to KubeCon, by the way?
Well, I'm not. I was late to ask for passes in the company, and I'm not having passes. I intend to find if somebody can give me a pass, because it's in Spain. It's easy to travel to me. If I am able to get a pass, I will go for sure.
Okay.
If you can't, it might be interesting for some of us to just like meet up anyhow if you're interested. A lot of what goes on is not really the conference anyhow. Unfortunately, I have 2 days that I have to talk, but other than that, like, I found the main thing that's useful for talks is going and asking people questions like at the end. And if you're not planning to do that, then catching the recordings is fine. Is the useful part is actually meeting up with people, and that doesn't actually necessarily have to be in the conference center. That can be somewhere nearby.
Okay, let me check. If I'm not able to get the passes, let me check if I can travel 1 or 2 days, and I will ping you and we can meet in Barcelona.
Yeah, I think it would be great. If nothing else, like maybe we can grab a couple of the kind people and just like meet somewhere. We'd probably need to plan that with everyone soon, but we could probably still pull that off even if it's not necessarily at the conference.
So near the conference building, the hall, there's nothing there. There are no cafes. There's no supermarkets. At least that's what I know. But we can travel to the center and go to get coffee or something.
Yeah, or we can go to like one of the hotel lobbies.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's where a couple of the meetups happened at KubeCon North America last time, was just like the like hotel bars.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will tell you something next week. I'm trying to contact some friends and let's see if I can make it.
Cool. Well, yeah, if you can, we'll try to meet up. That would be great.
Yeah.
We are like way over time, so.
Yeah, I have to leave in a minute.
Yeah, and I have to leave too. Well,
I'm sorry we couldn't meet the last time. I will try to make sure that we don't keep missing these.
No problem. For me, I'm fine with this schedule.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, happy Monday, everyone.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.